guys, and welcome back to ASMR Polar. So today I have a pretty exciting story to tell you. Now this is about the time that I got my babysitter smoking weed in my house. Well, my mum's house, but you get what I mean. So if you do enjoy, please do not forget to leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, turn on bell notifications on. And yeah guys, let's begin, and I hope that you enjoy. Okay guys, so this story time did actually take place back when I was around 12 years old. So back then, obviously I was young and I needed someone to look after me when my mum would work out night shifts, because that's what she used to do, to get some extra money. And you may be wondering, couldn't you stay like a grandparents or stay with your dad? Or for one, my dad, I'm not even gonna lie, he was always off doing his own things, and like getting to 12 years old, I would stay with my grandparents literally most of the days after school and even some weekends. So I just had enough with that, and my mum said, okay, that's fine, you keep moaning, I'll get a babysitter. So now my mum tells me after school that she got me this babysitter to make sure she was getting someone who, would look after me well. She actually decided that she would ask one of her friend's daughters, who was around 17 years old, to come and stay for the night and look after me. Because my mum would go to work around like 8 p.m. at night, and she would get back home around 6 to 7 in the morning, so she would work a full length night shift overnight. So, everything goes well. My mum's telling me, what's going to happen. She's like, okay, be respectful. Don't like full on hassle her. If you want something, I've told her all the rules, And she's basically like saying that she told her friend to tell her daughter like all the rules and things, and my mum would basically just pay her to look after me. She'd pay her some money. And I'm like, okay mum, I'll be good. And she's like, Isaac, promise me, because if you're not good, she won't be coming up to look after you again when I'm on nights. And I'm like, okay mum, like I promise I will be good. And you've got a bedtime as well. I've already, laid the rules to her about that. And I was like, what time's bed? And she's like, well, because it's a Friday, I'll give you till 10:30. And I was like, okay, thank you. That was cool back then. Like, now I know younger kids, they stay up way later than that, like even sometimes like 10-year-olds, but back then it was totally different, So anyways, 6 o'clock rolls around and the babysitter turns up. She actually just passed her driving test as well, so she pulled up in a car, parked outside. She comes into the house and I'm literally just in the living room at this point on my PlayStation. So on like the PlayStation 2 or something like that. It was a really old console, because back then my mum would never buy me like any of like the really consoles or anything. So I think it was the PS2. I'm not too sure, but it was an older console. It wasn't the newest one anyway. So I'm playing this and my mum opens the door, the babysitter walks in. Let's just give this babysitter a name. What shall we call her? What should we call this babysitter? Let's call her Lily. Okay, so Lily is the babysitter. Tingles as well. Okay, Lily is the babysitter. Yeah, let's keep going, because I'm waffling at this point. So anyways, my mum's talking to Lily and she's basically saying, okay, do you know like all the rules? Has your mum laid out all the rules? And they're just talking, because my mum used to babysit her when her mum would work like ages ago. She's like, oh Lily, how you doing? Are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. And my mum was like, oh, I heard that you just passed your driving as well. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, that's great, you can get around now. And she's like, oh, once you've got a car, you've got your freedom. And she's like, yeah, it's been great. And then she's like, okay, so you know all the rules, you're not going to do anything, you're not going to have any friends around. And she's like, no, I promise, smoke and then I'll be off. And she's like, okay, that's fine. So, you know, my mum introduces me to Lily. I've never met Lily before in my life. So, you know, my mum brings Lily into the living room and I'm just playing on my game. I'm not paying any attention. And she was hot. I'm not even going to lie, she was super hot. And my mum's like, okay, Isaac, this is Lily. And I'm like, Mum, I'm playing my game. And I look up and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, Mum, you've made me die now. What the hell? Because I was just staring at her because she was so hot, you know. And my mum's like to me, Isaac, are you paying attention? Lily's here to come and look after you, you know. I've gave her some money, she's going to be ordering food for you as well. Like, what do you want, you know, so we can order it before, you know, before I go to work. And she's like, can I have Papa John's? And she's like, okay, sure. Lily will sort this out. I'm going to go out for a smoke. Lily, you can stay in here, get to know Isaac a bit, and then I'll come in, say my goodbyes, and then I'll be off. So, you know, fast forward, my mum, she comes back in when she's been outside. She's like, okay, Isaac, I'm going to go. Comes up to me whilst I'm playing my game again, hugs me, and I'm like, Mum, you've made me die again. And then he's just laughing the whole time. And I'm like, Lily, it's not funny. Like, what are you doing? And my mum's like, Isaac, be nice to Lily, okay? It's my friend's daughter. And I'm like, I know that. So anyways, my mum goes off to work. She squeezes me tight, says she loves me. I say, okay, Mum, I love you too. She goes off to work. Then Lily's like, okay, Isaac, so how's your day been? You been all good? And I'm like, yeah, it's been pretty good. And she's like, Isaac, do you have another controller? And I'm like, nah, I don't, sorry. And she's like, well, you're off to bed soon anyway. That TV's all mine. And I'm like, whoa, like, no. She's like, well, yeah, it is. But do you still want the Papa John's? And I'm like, yeah, okay. So she orders the food. The food comes, and at this point, I'm not even playing the game anymore. We start to play Monopoly in the kitchen whilst we're waiting for the food. So, you know, the delivery guy comes. Lily sorts all that out. She gets the food, and she's like, okay, we're gonna lay this all out. And she pulls out this bottle from her bag that she had, and it's literally like a bottle of whiskey. And she starts mixing it with the drink that we poured. I'm like, are you sure you're meant to be doing that? And she's like, yeah, it'll be fine. I'm not gonna get too drunk, obviously. Duh. And I'm like, okay. So, you know, I eat my food. We go and watch a film. For some weird reason, we end up watching Home Alone. I don't know why. This is more of like a Christmassy type film. You know, we watch it around Christmas with your family. So we watched that, and I fall asleep near to the end. And then it's like, okay, Isaac, come on. I'm gonna take you up to bed. And I'm like, okay. To be honest, I didn't really get to know Lily that well, but I just thought she was a bit suspicious. You know, she'd do things and say things that you shouldn't really say around a kid. I'm not even gonna lie, she'd just say weird and just, you know, random things. So, you know, she takes me up to bed and she's like, okay, get undressed, I'll wait outside. You know, I get undressed, she's like, okay, good night, and she slowly walks out, shuts the door, and yeah, that's me. On my way to sleep. And at this point, you know, whilst watching the film, I was really tired. I fell asleep actually, and she woke me up to bring me up to bed. But when I got into bed, I could not sleep one bit I could not sleep. So I'm just laying there, and I get up to go to the toilet slowly, and I can hear Lily downstairs, but she must have been on the phone to like a boyfriend or something. Newsflash, she did not invite anyone round. No one came round. So I went to the toilet, and the toilet light automatically comes on, and it did back then as well. So, you know, I slowly close the bathroom door and go into bed, and he's like, Isaac, are you still awake? Are you up? And I shut my door slowly. I'm like, oh no, shut my door. So I lie back down in bed, and I can hear Lily coming up the stairs. I'm so grateful for the bathroom window being open, because, you know, the bathroom door would always like open and close itself when the window was open. So I lay down, Lily checked up on me, she opened my bedroom door, and I was like, you know, I pretended to be asleep. She walks in the bathroom and she's like, oh, this bloody window. She shuts the window, shuts the bathroom door, and I'm like, thank God that window was shut. So at this point it's like 11:15, and I end up, you know, just sitting on the floor some of like my little toys that I had. You have toys back then. I'm not too sure how many like 12-year-olds have toys these days, but back then I had toys and whatnot, and just other little things. So around half an hour of me playing with these toys, and I can literally smell something that was funny to me at the time. No, it was the Mary Jane, it was the devil's lettuce, the marijuana. So I smell this, I'm like, what on earth is that? Like, what the hell? So I slowly open my bedroom door, and I stand at the top of the landing, looking down the stairs, and I can see towards the kitchen that the light is on. So the kitchen light is on. And like, okay, what is Lily doing down there? She's cooking something funny, because this is making my head go a bit weird. A bit light-headed, actually. I walk downstairs slowly. I get to the bottom of the steps, and I look to the right, because that's where the dining room would be. Then there's the kitchen. Lily was sitting in the kitchen, on the table. Bruh, this was mad. She had like her iPad up, and she was like listening to music connected to the speakers, and she was just walking around the kitchen, and she then just stopped, and she looked towards where I was, and I was like, oh no. So I stood back. She's like, hello, is anyone there? I was like, oh no, what do I do? So at this point, I stand for a bit, and Lily comes storming towards me, like storming to where I'd be. I was like, oh crap, what do I do? So I run back up the stairs. Yeah, I don't know why I'd done this. I could have gone into the living room and hid behind the door or behind the couch or the settee. I don't know why I said couch, mainly for American viewers. But no, I started to run upstairs, so she could definitely hear me at this point. She's like, Isaac, are you there? What are you doing up? Oh my god. And I saw something in her hand, like she was smoking. And I was like, Lily, what's that in your hand? Like, what's that smell? And she's like, oh no, oh god, oh no, oh no, oh no, 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 no. And she starts like rubbing her head, and she's like, Isaac, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, Lily, what is it? And she was like, Isaac, I'm just smoking, like anything, like, do you want to stay up for an extra like hour or something? Like, do you want to play with your toys? Do you want to watch something on TV? Like, please, you could not, please, like, you could not tell your mum about this. And I'm like, Lily, just tell me what it is. Is it drugs? I say. And she's like, Isaac, it's not as deep as you think. She doesn't exactly say that. She said, Isaac, it's not as bad as you think. It's literally just something that you smoke to calm you down. And I'm like, okay. And she was like, well, please, once again, can you not tell your mum? And I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. And she's like, please, promise me, like, the money that your mum paid me, I'll give it to you. And my face lights up. I'm like, really? And she's like, yes, I'll give you the money. And I'm like, okay, thank you, where's the money? And I run back down the stairs, and she gives me the look of disgust, like, Isaac, you little idiot, taking my money. But I kind of use this, and in my head I was thinking at the time, okay, she's doing something bad. I didn't quite know what it was. I didn't quite know. But I ended up taking the money, and I'm like, thank you, Lily. I run upstairs, and she's like, oh, you're going back to bed? And she's kind of nervous at this point of like, what I'm going to do. Like, I've took the money. And I'm like, yes, I'm going up to bed. And she's like, Isaac, stop. You promise me you're not going to tell your mum, right? And I'm like, Lily, a promise is a promise. And she's like, oh, Isaac, that's great. Anyways, I was just smoking something to calm me down. Okay, I'm going to put it out now. I'm going to open the windows and I'm going to clean up. And I'm like, okay, perfect. So, I go upstairs. I put the money under my pillow. I tidy up my room. I get into bed. And I fall straight asleep. So the next morning, I hear my mum talking to Lily, like, downstairs in the hallway. And my mum's like, oh, how was it? And she was like, oh, it was great. Anyways, I've got to go. I've got to go off to work, Lily was saying. Mum was like, oh, okay, you going this quick? And she was like, yeah, I've really got to go. I'm a bit late. She's like, okay, like, was the money enough? Do you want any other money? And she was like, no, everything's great. Isaac's a great kid as well. And Mum was like, okay, goodbye anyways, Lily. And Lily's like, oh, goodbye. And she says my mum's name, so Lily goes off, my mum comes up to me, and I'm standing like at the top of the landing, just listening. Mum was like, "Oh, what are you just listening, standing there?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing." And she's like, "Oh, do you have a good time? Did you listen to Lily? Is everything good?" Like, and I'm like, "Yeah, Mum, everything's fine. Like, it was great." And she's like, "Well, would you want Lily again?" And I was like, she's a little bit weird. And Mum was like, "Why? Like, did she do anything?" And I was like, "Oh, no. She's just a bit strange, didn't talk much." And Mum was like, "Oh, it's just nerves. She's pretty young too, but yeah, everything was great, right?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, everything was fine." So, I don't actually have Lily again as a babysitter. I didn't really have a babysitter much after that. I went back to staying with my nan and my granddad. But yeah, that was basically the whole story. I did see Lily a few years later, and she didn't really talk to me. I'm not gonna lie, I was about 15, and I saw her when I was staying with my friends, and she was with some of her friends, I think. I'm not too sure, but yeah, she just looked at me, smiled, and she's like, "I was alright," and I was like, "Yep, I'm great, Lily." And she's like, "Ah, that's good," and she just walked off, and that was basically it. I didn't see much of her after that. But yeah, that was the whole story. If you enjoyed, please don't forget to leave a like, comment down below and subscribe. If you have any similar stories, don't forget to comment them down in the comment section, because I love reading all your guys' stories. And this is Isaac, signing out.